is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: more trade and more trust. China's President Xi Jinping leaves Vietnam as both countries commit to strengthening security and intelligence ties. Our other headlines: storms in Gaza worsen conditions for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who fled their homes in Israel's ongoing bombardment. We demand a ceasefire. The United Nations General Assembly backs a non-binding resolution on Gaza. And was COP a cop-out? A deal at the climate talks to transition away from fossil fuels, but smaller countries call it a litany of loopholes. China and Vietnam have agreed to increase security cooperation and move towards what both sides are calling a community with a shared future. Before leaving Vietnam, President Xi Jinping met young people from both countries and discussed their role in shaping the future. His visit included talks with the country's leaders and a pilgrimage to the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum in Hanoi. Agreements were also reached covering investment in rail infrastructure and communications.
Talks with Vietnamese President Vo Van Thuan, President Xi Jinping said China and Vietnam should join hands to build a China-Vietnam community with a shared future that carries strategic significance. To achieve that, Xi said the two sides should strengthen political guidance, enhance solidarity and cooperation, deepen mutually beneficial cooperation, step up guidance on public opinion and properly manage differences. President Vo Van Thuan said the Vietnamese side will strengthen experience exchange in party and state governance, comprehensively advance practical cooperation in various fields including politics, economy, trade, people-to-people exchanges and security, uphold national political security, and facilitate industrialization and modernization. He added that Vietnam stands ready to properly address maritime differences under the spirit of mutual respect and win-win cooperation. President Xi Jinping also met with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh in Hanoi. President Xi said China will import more quality Vietnamese products, strengthen its connection with Vietnam on industrial and supply chains, enhance connectivity, and expand its cooperation with Vietnam in emerging areas like renewable energy and digital economy. He said it is important that two sides increase people-to-people exchanges and prepare the younger generation for the task of taking over the baton of China-Vietnam friendship at an early date. Prime Minister Chinh said Vietnam will work with China to maintain close, high-level exchanges, strengthen all-round cooperation in trade and economy, people-to-people exchanges, defense and security, and step up coordination in the multilateral arena. In his meeting with Vuong Dinh Hue, chairman of the National Assembly of Vietnam, President Xi encouraged further legislative exchanges and cooperation to strengthen the relationship and support the development of governance systems in both countries.
A storm in Gaza has worsened the conditions for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who fled their homes in Israel's ongoing bombardment. The Israeli military says it's carried out 250 strikes across the Strip in the last 24 hours. The United Nations says Gaza's health system has collapsed and is facing a public health disaster. Around 85% of the population is now internally displaced, and the UN warns the conflict could spur more displacement. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Noor Harazin, who's in central Gaza. Noor, so this heavy rain making conditions worse and more bad weather on the way.
Well, yes, actually, this storm, this heavy rain is adding to the struggle of Palestinians here in Gaza, especially those displaced people. I mean, here inside the Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital, there is an estimated number of more than 700 tents that are along the backyard of the hospital since the early hours of this morning. And when the rain started falling down, we saw people leaving their tents, running around, trying to get inside the hospital and take shelter inside the building of the hospital. Now their tents is full of mud. Everything that they managed to collect over the past few weeks, like mattresses, blankets, pillows, is now wet and they cannot use it anymore. And this is happening here inside the Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital. We can imagine the situation of hundreds of thousands who are inside the Al-Mawasi refugee camp, and this is the safe area that the IDF talked about, told Palestinians to evacuate to. There we have hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in a total desert with no infrastructure. They do not even have a building to take shelter in. So yes, this storm, this very bad weather is adding to the suffering of the Palestinian people here in Gaza.
Okay, well, that's the meteorology. What about the military story? What's the latest on the ground?
Well, continuous Israeli air raids on several areas along the coastal enclave in northern Gaza. And let us talk about the hospital of Kamal Udwan. According to Ashraf Al-Qudra, who is the spokesperson of the Palestinian Health Ministry here in Gaza, he said that this morning the Israeli forces stormed into the Kamal Udwan hospital. They separated men from women. They abducted the medical staff from the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, and also all men that were with their families, the displaced families inside, taking shelter inside the Kamal Udwan hospital. Now, inside the hospital, there is only 10 nurses that are taking care of 12 premature babies and 65 patients. Adding to this, the fact that for 5 days now, the people who are stranded inside the Kamal Udwan hospital, they have no food, no water, and no electricity, and of course, no medical supplies coming into the hospital. At the same time, talking about the latest on the ground here in southern Gaza, intensive Israeli shelling in Al-Hikr Street. Al-Hikr Street, this is a street that is separating Deir al-Balah, where I am now, from Khan Yunis. According to Palestinian medical sources here inside the hospital, 8 people were killed in this Israeli attack on Deir al-Balah.
Noor, thank you for that. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Well, Israel says it'll continue its conflict against Hamas with or without international support. The country is facing growing diplomatic isolation after the United Nations voted overwhelmingly to demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The United States was one of the 10 countries to vote against the resolution, but President Joe Biden has warned that indiscriminate bombing of civilians was costing Israel global support. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Sarah, divisions widening between the United States and Israel.
They certainly are, Jamie. Biden is now dispatching one of his top advisors. That's Jake Sullivan. He's expected to touch down right here in Tel Aviv as early as tomorrow. Now, what we do know is that he'll be meeting with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, also Israel's war cabinet, and we'll be discussing this ground operation, also the next phase of this war. But look, here in Israel, top Israeli officials are concerned that Sullivan will be giving them a time frame on when they need to wrap up this war. And look, what we've been hearing from Israel is nobody can tell them when this will end. They say that they will continue this ground operation until they defeat Hamas. Now, on the back of that trip, the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he's also expected early next week at the invitation of Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He'll be briefed also on the operation and the situation on Israel's northern border. But look, going further into relationships, and it certainly seems as though that personal relationship even between Biden and Netanyahu is growing somewhat icy. There have been a number of leaks over the last few days coming out of meetings from Israel's Knesset, with Netanyahu reportedly saying that he can take care of Biden. Now, this is reportedly in relation to these pushes by the United States that Israel must limit civilian casualties on the ground and also have a plan for what a post-war Gaza would look like, also making Israel to try and agree to a two-state solution, something that it has refrained from until now.
Sarah, a word, if you would, on these reports in the United States suggesting Israel has begun pumping seawater into the tunnels in the Gaza Strip.
Well, Jamie, look, these reports have been circulating now for a number of weeks. Still no comment on this report in the Wall Street Journal from Israeli officials. But according to top US advisors who are familiar with this reported operation, it is now in its testing phase, and Israel is basically seeing how it all plays out. Now, what we have been hearing is if this is indeed going ahead, it would be in a bid to try and flush out these Hamas fighters who are reportedly hiding in these tunnels. But of course, there is a lot of concern. Firstly, due to the fact that there isn't much water in the Gaza Strip that is of drinking quality anyway, there are fears that this could further corrupt the water in the Strip. And also, of course, for these hostages, with some of these hostages that have already been released, saying that they were kept down inside tunnels, and their families are obviously extremely concerned. So, look, I'm sure we'll hear more about this, Jamie, in the coming days.
Sarah, thank you very much for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Volodymyr Zelensky says Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has no reason to block Ukraine's EU membership. The Ukrainian president made his comments on a visit to Norway, where he's been holding talks with Nordic leaders on more support for Kyiv. Most of the European Union's 27 members want to agree to billions of dollars in further aid for Ukraine and to open talks on its accession at a summit this week. But both moves are being blocked by Budapest. Poland's new cabinet has been sworn in at a ceremony in Warsaw. The former European Council chief, Donald Tusk, is the new prime minister. He's promising to restore the rule of law and constitutional government after a string of social, judicial and media reforms imposed by his predecessor. Tusk's ruling alliance holds the most seats in parliament after October's elections. People in northern China have been told to stay at home as a severe snowstorm hits for the second time this week. Schools in Beijing have shut, with many highways closed and train services suspended. The icy conditions are expected to continue for the next few days, with temperatures plunging to as low as -18 degrees Celsius. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, saving the planet or saving the oil industry. We're at the climate talks at COP28 in Dubai. Next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more... Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. China's President Xi Jinping leaves Vietnam as both countries commit to strengthening security and intelligence ties. Our other headlines: storms in Gaza worsen conditions for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who fled their homes in Israel's ongoing bombardment. And we demand a ceasefire. The United Nations General Assembly backs a non-binding resolution on Gaza. Ambitious and unprecedented, or lacking teeth? The deal at the COP28 climate summit in Dubai has called on all countries to move away from coal, oil and gas. For the first time, the final document includes a transitioning from fossil fuels to reach global net zero emissions. But it falls short of the words phasing out demanded by many countries and campaign groups. Some smaller countries suffering the effects of climate change have complained that they were excluded from the final negotiations. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Yasser Hakim, who's watching events for us in Dubai. Yasser, just talk us through what this agreement says and why it's been so controversial.
Well, it's been controversial because it did not include phase out, even in the first text. The final document has replaced the word phase out with transitioning away, which means, in other words, the same, according to some of the European officials I have spoken to, who staunchly were lobbying for the phase out term to be included. And they said the new text is even stronger than they had expected because it is also linked to the scientific definition and trying to maintain the 1.5 degrees. Obviously, many states have also been, like you said, complaining because saying this does not mean that there will be a phased out of fossil fuels. But at the same time, the UAE presidency feels this is a victory because at the end, they managed to get the unanimous vote on this controversial clause, and that it is going forward in a way that it can help at least balance the tide between both sides, the oil producing and some of the developing nations who were against it, and the developed nations and the small island states who wanted the phase out and who did not want this text or did not accept this text at all. Obviously, it went through 24 hours after the deadline, and finally it has come today, and it has ended actually with the final declaration. Back to you.
Yes, sir. It looks like the international press pack is packing up behind you and moved on. In practical terms, in terms of the announcement, what happens next?
It's the same problem every year. I mean, you have a paper or a document where everyone has agreed to abide this document, but then many do not do so, and it's forgotten maybe for months until the next COP.
Oh, I think we've lost our correspondent there, Yasser Hakim. They're obviously unplugging in Dubai, but I think we got the gist of what he said. We'll carry on with the rest of today's news. The UK Prime Minister's popularity is at an all-time low, according to the latest survey published by YouGov, which found 70% of the voters now have an unfavourable opinion of Rishi Sunak. This as the Prime Minister avoided defeat in Parliament over his contentious migration policy, which involves sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. This followed last-ditch negotiations and fears that some of his Conservative Party members would vote against the bill because it wasn't tough enough. Britain's Supreme Court ruled last month that the policy breached human rights laws and international agreements. Well, our correspondent Paul Hawkins has been visiting a charity that works with people arriving in the UK.
Hi, my name is Rishan Sagai. I'm from Eritrea, which is located in the East Africa. I came to the UK 8 years ago now.
Rishan is a media ambassador for CRAN, that's the Kent Refugee Action Network, the charity that helped her and thousands of other refugees aged 16 to 24 when they first arrived in the UK. How much does CRAN mean to you?
They are like my second family. I created friendship, and then I create environment like where I can feel free and then have that welcoming environment, because everything was new to me.
Lessons like this help these young people get into college or school.
Do you have the biggest number?
And it's not just education. Drama, sport, help with their asylum application. For the last 20 years, the charity's offered a range of services.
I travel from Sudan to here, which is crossing the, obviously, Mediterranean Sea, through Italy to France to Calais and then to here.
How was that journey?
This is really awful and hard. And I guess I would say I was fortunate to be alive here today, to be able to speak to you, because some of my friends, they didn't make it to here. I mean, we're separated. It was a traumatizing journey.
Rishan arrived in the UK on a lorry, but since 2018, over 100,000 migrants have arrived by small boat from France. The government here has promised to stop the boats by putting asylum seekers off from making the dangerous crossing with the threat of deportation to Rwanda in East Africa, where their asylum application would be processed.
The idea of Rwanda, like to stop people coming, why would people stop if they want to seek safety? If I already made the journey, I can't go back. Where are the people they're going to go back? How they will stop them? But the way they see it is like, oh, coming here for luxury, coming here to have houses, to have this, and that's the wrong image has been presented to the public. And that's why I want to raise awareness, like people seek safety, or people come to the UK because they have their family here. I'm studying nursing. This is my final year. And I would like to be involved in the NHS and then to be part of it.
Do you feel British?
I feel like I'm part of my foster family. I'm part of the British public here. I feel I'm part of my church community. I feel part of them.
Maybe not British, but part of the UK. You feel part of the UK?
Yeah, I do feel part of the UK. I just recently passed my citizenship, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be British, but I just feel like I just want to be part of it.
China now has more branded coffee shops than the United States. The number of chain outlets has grown nearly 60% in the last year. Our correspondent Li Jianhua looks at the reasons for the rising demand for a caffeine kick.
Everybody knows that China is traditionally a tea-drinking country. But how about coffee? Is this as popular in China as it is elsewhere in the world? Starbucks dominates the world's coffee market, but in China, a new brand recently knocked them off the top spot. And their success says a lot about coffee culture in China. Starbucks operates over 6,500 stores in China. Luckin Coffee, a homegrown brand founded in 2017, overtook Starbucks in June 2023 and became the largest coffee chain in China with 10,000 stores. But wait! In June 2020, Luckin was delisted from the Nasdaq because of accounting fraud, for which the company had to pay a penalty of $180 million. So how did the tables turn, and how did Luckin manage to capture China's heart? First, who drinks coffee in China? The earliest coffee house in record was set up in 1836 by a Danish person in southern China's Guangzhou. It was called by the Chinese then as black wine. But it was only when millennials and later Gen Z became the main consuming group that coffee, especially freshly ground coffee, became a leading beverage. Coffee's market value is expected to exceed $30 billion by 2025. And Luckin is dominating that market with cheap, innovative and fun products, mainly appealing to Gen Z. 80% of coffee drinkers are aged between 20 and 35, and they either drink it to wake up or to socialize with friends. Unlike Starbucks, which provides a cozy and comfortable environment to sit and chat, Luckin's stores are usually quite small and are more, here we go, grab and go. Coffee coffee culture has also embraced the digitalization. Consumers order from mobile apps so that drinks are ready when they arrive, and they can also get them delivered to their workplace. And you can get your coffee anywhere at any time. The Chinese market's love of innovation has embraced Luckin's co-branding partnerships. In September, the company introduced a liquor-flavored latte together with China's most high-end alcohol brand, Maotai. That has captured many young Chinese commuters' hearts. On launch day, over 5 million cups were sold, and that single-day turnover exceeded $13 million. Can they stay on top? Well, who knows? In the lightning speed of change in the Chinese consumer market, you always need to stay ahead of the game.
The rising cost of living is casting something of a shadow over Europe's traditional Christmas markets. In Hungary, surging energy bills and the highest inflation in the Eurozone means that for many, this festive season has lost some of its sparkle. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
The muted glow of festive lights at one of Budapest's Christmas markets sets a somber tone, mirroring Hungary's economic challenges. The rising cost of living is dimming the holiday spirit of customers and vendors alike.
The electricity, it's 3 times more expensive than last year.
Karolina Kovac has been a pottery seller at this Christmas market for over a decade. This year, she had to increase her prices by 20% due to the steep rise in production costs for her ceramic goods.
Now it's okay for tourists, not for Hungarians.
The surge in prices at Hungary's Christmas markets this season can be partly attributed to the country's high inflation, currently standing at 9.9% year-on-year. This has left locals grappling with the consequences. For many, the once affordable delights in these markets are now a luxury.
Inflation is the Grinch at Budapest Christmas market this year. This hot dog now costs $15, and a cup of cheer will run you $5 more. This festive season comes at a steeper price.
Economists say that despite the recent fall in inflation, which was close to 26% a year ago, the nation's still grappling with a recession that has eroded people's savings over the last year.
And last year, we already had a huge price shock, so that the single-digit inflation does not mean that the prices are now coming down. It only means that the speed of inflation is not as high as used to be, but some prices still go up.
Vendors like Violeta Horich are thankful for the return of foreign visitors to these markets, but she says even the tourists are being more careful with their money.
After the COVID, there were so many tourists, and you know that you could feel it, that they want to buy everything. And now it's not like that. So they are buying a lot of stuff, but you know, they think about it, what they want to buy.
Without the influx of tourists, market vendors would be struggling to make a profit as soaring prices turn Christmas cheer into holiday blues for locals. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Budapest.
Their headlines again. China's President Xi Jinping leaves Vietnam as both countries commit to strengthening security and intelligence ties. Our other headlines: storms in Gaza worsen the conditions for displaced Palestinians as Israel faces growing diplomatic isolation over its ongoing bombardment. And was COP a cop-out? The deal at the climate talks to transition away from fossil fuels. Smaller countries call it a litany of loopholes. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.